Welcome, my friend. Before we begin tonight's journey through time, take a moment to settle into your space. Rest your body, quiet your thoughts, and allow your breath to find a slow and steady rhythm. This will not be a hurried story. It will be a calm unfolding. A gentle passage through history meant to guide you into both reflection and rest. Tonight, we travel to the Golden Age of Islam, a period that stretched from the 8th to the 13th centuries, when cities like Baghdad and Cairo were centers of learning, trade, and culture. It was a time of dazzling achievements in science, philosophy, literature, and art. But it was also a world with rhythms, expectations, and challenges so different from our own, that to step into it, even for a single day, would be to enter a life that most of us today would struggle to endure. Imagine yourself walking through the bustling streets of Baghdad around the 10th century. The air is alive with sound, merchants calling from their stalls, scholars debating in shaded courtyards, the hum of conversation in many languages, the scent of spices drifts from the marketplace, cinnamon, saffron, cardamom, mingling with the aroma of bread baking in clay ovens. Everywhere you turn, there is movement, trade, learning, devotion. And yet, for the ordinary person, life was not easy. The comforts we take for granted today, clean water, medicine, stable shelter, were fragile luxuries. The heat of the sun bore down relentlessly. Food supplies were uncertain, and survival depended on the intricate structures of family, religion, and community. You would not last long in this world without the knowledge, skills, and resilience that people of that age carried naturally. This is not a story of spectacle. It is a quiet immersion into daily lives, into the voices of rulers and scholars, into the mysteries of ancient knowledge, and into the contrasts between wealth and poverty, power and fragility. Over the course of this night's journey, we will explore the rhythm of daily life, the lives of great figures, the mysteries of learning and discovery, the contrasts of rich and poor, and the legacy that endures even now. So, let us begin. Close your eyes, if you wish, let the images form softly in your imagination, and prepare to step gently into the golden age of Islam, a world where brilliance and hardship coexisted, and where survival itself was a constant effort. Imagine yourself waking in the city of Baghdad during the height of the golden age of Islam in the 10th century. The first light of dawn spreads gently across the rooftops, the soft call to prayer echoing through the narrow streets. It is not the sound of alarm clocks or buzzing devices, but the steady voice of the muezzin, rising and falling in calm rhythm, reminding the city that the day has begun. You rise from your bedding, perhaps nothing more than a simple mat or cushion laid upon the floor. The room around you is modest. Plaster walls, wooden beams, a window shaded with woven cloth. There is little furniture, perhaps only a chest for clothing, a jug of water, and a low table. The air is warm already, carrying with it the faint scent of dust and smoke from cooking fires being lit across the neighborhood. Stepping outside, the street is narrow, lined with houses of mud brick and stone, their walls high, their windows small to keep the heat at bay. The ground beneath your feet is uneven, worn by countless footsteps over the years. You hear voices, the bleating of goats, the rattle of carts as merchants begin their morning work. Breakfast is simple. Perhaps flatbread, baked fresh in the communal oven, its surface still warm, soft and fragrant. You dip it into a bowl of olive oil or eat it with dates, sweet and sticky. There is water carried from the well, sometimes cool and refreshing, sometimes cloudy, reminding you that purity of water was never guaranteed. A small cup of milk, if you are fortunate, or thin porridge, if supplies allow. Food is sustenance, not indulgence, and you eat quickly, for the day's labor waits. The heart of the city is the bazaar. As you walk, the streets grow busier, filled with merchants setting out their goods. Stalls are shaded with cloth, goods stacked high. Spices in piles of gold, red and green, silk fabrics shimmering in the sun. Jars of honey glistening in glass. The air is alive with scents, cumin and cinnamon, roasted chickpeas, and the faint tang of animals being prepared for sale. The noise, too, is constant. Bargaining voices, the bray of donkeys, the clatter of pottery, the soft murmur of scholars debating in doorways. Arabic is the language of the streets, but you hear others as well. Persian, Greek, Syriac, for Baghdad is a meeting place of cultures, a hub of trade stretching across continents. You pass a scribe seated cross-legged with his tools of ink and reed pen, ready to write letters for those who cannot write themselves. Nearby, a group of children chase one another through the crowd, their laughter mingling with the voices of vendors calling out their wares. The streets are narrow and shaded in some places, wide and hot in others, but always crowded, always alive. For most, life is labor. If you are a craftsman, you work at a loom, weaving cloth slowly, your fingers moving with practiced rhythm. If you are a potter, you turn the wheel, shaping clay into vessels, feeling the texture smooth beneath your hands. If you are a laborer, you carry loads through the streets, your back bent, your shoulders aching beneath the weight. Each day is defined by repetition, by effort, by the hope that today's earnings will provide enough for tomorrow's meals. The wealthy live differently, but for the majority, survival depends on steady work, on the ability to endure heat, dust, and uncertainty. As the sun climbs high, the air grows heavy. The streets shimmer, shadows shrink, and the city slows. Shops close their shutters. Men and women retreat indoors. The rhythm of life pausing to escape the most punishing hours of the day. Inside, you rest. The walls of your home offer some relief, though the air remains warm. You sip water sparingly, dip bread into a dish of lentils or beans, and lie still, conserving strength until the sun begins to lower once more. As evening comes, the streets fill again. The air cools slightly, the call to prayer once more echoing across rooftops. Families gather for meals, bread, rice, perhaps lamb or fish, if fortune allows. The meal is eaten together, shared from large dishes, eaten with the right hand. Children sit close, elders speak, neighbors may join. The city grows quieter as night falls. Lanterns glow faintly in courtyards, the stars shine above, and the hum of the day fades into silence. You return to your mat, your body weary, your mind already preparing for the same rhythm tomorrow. This is daily life in the golden age of Islam. Bustling streets, fragrant markets, steady labor, and communal rest. A life rich in culture and learning, yet for most, marked by the constant effort of survival in a world without modern comforts. Among the rulers of the golden age of Islam, few are remembered as vividly as Harun al-Rashid, the Abbasid Caliph, who reigned from 786 to 809. His name appears not only in history books, but also in legends, in poetry, and in the stories of 1001 Nights. To understand him is to glimpse both the grandeur and the contradictions of his time. Harun was born into the Abbasid dynasty, a family that had risen to power in 750 after overthrowing the Umayyads. By the time he came of age, the Abbasid Caliphate stretched from the western lands of North Africa to the eastern reaches of Persia. Its capital, Baghdad, was already a center of learning, trade, and culture. Imagine the city at the time of his birth. The Tigris River flows steadily through its heart, bridges crossing its waters, boats carrying goods and people. The newly built round city, with its great walls and gates, stands as a symbol of Abbasid authority. Markets buzz with merchants, scholars gather in houses of study, and caravans arrive daily with goods from distant lands. This was the world Harun inherited. Vast, diverse, filled with opportunity and challenge. Harun became Caliph at a young age, only in his early 20s. His reign quickly became known for both its magnificence and its intensity. He patronized scholars, poets, and scientists, funding the great translation movement that brought Greek, Persian, and Indian knowledge into Arabic. He built libraries, supported hospitals, and ensured that Baghdad became a beacon of learning across the world. But he was also a ruler of discipline and ambition. His armies marched across frontiers, his officials maintained order, and his policies extended Abbasid authority across vast territories. Imagine him seated in his court. The hall is grand, its floors covered with carpets, its walls adorned with geometric patterns and calligraphy. Courtiers stand in attendance, poets ready to recite verses, scholars prepared to debate philosophy or medicine. Harun listens, his presence calm yet commanding, his voice measured, his words decisive. One of Harun's most enduring legacies is his support for learning. It was during his reign that the House of Wisdom in Baghdad grew, a center where texts were translated, studied, and expanded upon. Greek philosophy, Indian mathematics, Persian medicine, all were preserved and transformed in Arabic. Imagine a scholar in Baghdad at this time. He sits at a low desk, a lamp flickering beside him, as he copies a text from Greek into Arabic. His pen moves slowly, his mind focused not only on words but on meaning, adapting ancient ideas into a new world. Around him, others debate astronomy, calculate equations, or experiment with medicine. The air hums not with noise, but with thought, steady, patient, enduring. This intellectual flowering was not loud or dramatic, but a steady current that carried knowledge across centuries. And yet, Harun's reign was not only peace and learning, it was also marked by conflict, rebellion, and the burdens of ruling such a vast empire. Frontier wars with the Byzantine Empire drained resources. Internal divisions threatened unity. Rivalries within his own family sowed seeds of discord that would later fracture the caliphate. Imagine the caliph in his private chambers at night, the court now silent, the city hushed. He sits with advisors, discussing reports of unrest in distant provinces. Maps are spread before him, marked with rivers and mountains, armies and towns. His face is calm, but his mind turns with the weight of responsibility. Decisions that will affect millions. For all his wealth and grandeur, his life was shaped by the same truth as any ruler, that power carries not only splendor, but solitude. Harun al-Rashid died in 809 during a military campaign in the eastern provinces. His death marked the beginning of divisions within the Abbasid dynasty, as his sons fought for succession. But his memory lived on, not only in chronicles but in legend. In the stories of 1001 Nights, Harun appears as a curious ruler, wandering the streets of Baghdad in disguise, seeking to understand his people. Whether these tales are fact or fiction hardly matters. They reflect the image of a caliph whose reign embodied the grandeur, wealth, and mystery of the Abbasid age. Think of Harun al-Rashid not as a figure of drama, but as a man of his time, a ruler seated in a hall of learning, a patron of scholars, a man both admired and burdened. His reign captures the rhythm of the Golden Age, knowledge, beauty, wealth, but also challenge, fragility, and the constant balance of power. Knowledge, like light, spreads quietly. In the golden age of Islam, Baghdad became the lantern of the world, its glow reaching across continents. At the heart of this light was something both simple and profound. The act of translating words. Greek, Persian, Indian, and Syriac texts were gathered, studied, and transformed into Arabic, creating a legacy that still shapes our world today. This was the translation movement, and its center was the Beit al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom. Imagine caravans arriving in Baghdad, their camels heavy with scrolls and manuscripts. Some come from Byzantine libraries, others from ancient Persian traditions, still others from India. The texts cover philosophy, astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and more. The collected thought of civilizations long past. Inside the House of Wisdom, scribes and scholars gather around low tables. Lamps burn with faint oil light, illuminating stacks of parchment and papyrus. The air smells of ink, of lamp oil, of parchment that has aged for centuries. Men sit cross-legged, their pens scratching steadily as Greek is rendered into Arabic, Persian into Arabic, Sanskrit into Arabic. Each line is not only copied but considered, debated, and expanded. Imagine the quiet hum of their work. A passage from Aristotle being translated. A theorem from Euclid written anew. An Indian treatise on medicine adapted for a new audience. The room is filled not with noise, but with concentration, the air vibrating with thought. To those of us today, it seems natural that ancient Greek philosophy or Indian mathematics should be known. But in this era, much of that knowledge had been scattered, forgotten, or left vulnerable to loss. The translation movement became a mystery in its own right. Why this place? Why this time? Why these people who felt so compelled to preserve? Imagine holding a manuscript, its ink fading, its edges frayed. Without careful work, it could crumble, its words lost forever. And yet, through translation, it becomes living once again. Carried into Arabic, taught in classrooms, debated in courtyards, shaping new generations of thought. The mystery lies in this continuity. Voices from long ago speaking anew, their words not vanishing into silence, but traveling across centuries. The House of Wisdom itself was more than a library. It was a center of inquiry, a place where scholars gathered not only to preserve, but to innovate. Astronomers mapped the stars with greater accuracy than ever before. Mathematicians developed algebra, algorithms, and systems of calculation that underpin modern science. Physicians studied the human body, creating medical encyclopedias that would later influence Europe for centuries. Imagine walking through its halls. One room filled with scrolls, shelves lined with manuscripts. Another filled with scholars in debate, their voices calm but firm as they discuss the nature of the heavens, the properties of numbers, the workings of the human body. The air is alive with curiosity, with the quiet rhythm of minds at work. Arabic became the language of science, of philosophy, of literature. It was precise, flexible, and elegant, capable of carrying ideas from many cultures into a shared form. Imagine hearing a scholar read aloud a passage from Aristotle in Arabic. The words flow smoothly, the concepts alive once more. What was once confined to a narrow circle is now available to a vast community, connected by a common tongue. This unification of language created not only preservation, but transformation. Ancient ideas enriched, expanded, and reimagined in new ways. The House of Wisdom no longer stands. Its manuscripts, its shelves, its scholars are long gone, but the memory of it remains, whispered in chronicles, hinted at in surviving texts, echoed in the very foundations of modern science. The mystery of the House of Wisdom is that it was both fragile and enduring. Fragile because a single fire or raid could have destroyed its work. Enduring because the ideas it carried found their way into Europe, into Asia, into the very heart of the world we know today. Picture the House of Wisdom at dusk. The lamps glow warmly, casting circles of light across the manuscripts. Outside, the city of Baghdad hums softly, merchants closing their stalls, families preparing for evening meals. Inside, the scholars still work, their pens moving steadily, their voices low. Knowledge flows quietly from one hand to another, one language to another, one age to another. It is not dramatic, not loud, but calm, steady, patient, and in this patience lies mystery. The mystery of why words endure, why thought survives, why light can travel so far across time. The golden age of Islam is often remembered for brilliance. Shining palaces, illuminated manuscripts, flowing poetry, and refined culture. But beneath the grandeur lay contrasts as deep as the desert's night and day. The life of a caliph, a merchant prince, or a scholar of renown was vastly different from that of a craftsman, a porter, or a servant. To walk through Baghdad was to move between worlds that touched one another in space, but rarely in comfort. Imagine the home of an elite family in Baghdad. A great house with high walls, enclosing a courtyard shaded by trees. A fountain bubbles quietly at the center, its sound cooling the air in the heat of the day. The walls are plastered smooth, adorned with geometric patterns and calligraphy. The floors covered with woven carpets soft underfoot. Servants move quietly, carrying trays of dates, almonds, and honey. A scholar reclines, with a book in hand, the pages written in fine calligraphy. In another room, music is played softly on an oud, its strings producing notes that echo gently across the courtyard. Meals are elaborate. Rice cooked with saffron, lamb stewed with herbs, bread warm from the oven, bowls of yogurt and fruit. Wine, though forbidden for some, flowed freely in elite circles, especially in private gatherings where poets recited verses of love and longing. The elite lived surrounded by refinement, their lives enriched not only by wealth but by the steady influx of ideas, goods, and art from across the empire. Now imagine the home of a craftsman or laborer. It is smaller, simpler, built of mud brick or stone. The walls bare, the floor plain. There is no courtyard, only a single room where family eats, sleeps, and lives together. Meals are modest bread dipped in oil, lentils boiled with onions, a few olives, perhaps fish if near the river, meat only on rare occasions. The day is long. At dawn, the laborer walks to the marketplace, offering his services as a porter, carrying loads of grain or baskets of fruit. The craftsman sits at his bench, weaving cloth or shaping metal, his hands calloused, his body bent with work. For them, survival is uncertain. Illness, bad harvests, or disruptions in trade can mean hunger, and the safety nets of charity are thin. Their lives are lived in the shadow of wealth, but without its ease. And yet, the city was a meeting ground. The poor and the wealthy walked the same streets, though in different ways. The Caliph's procession, with guards, banners, and horses, moved past the same market stalls where commoners sold vegetables and dates. A merchant's house stood beside a modest workshop, their doors opening onto the same dusty road. The mosque was a unifying place where all stood together in prayer, shoulder to shoulder. The distinctions of wealth momentarily set aside, but once prayers ended, each returned to their world. One to the comfort of shaded courtyards, the other to the heat of labor. The wealth of the elite was built not only on trade and scholarship, but also on the labor of the many. The ships that carried silks and spices depended on dock workers. Scholars got their copies from scribes, who were paid very little. The houses built for nobles were raised stone by masons who lived in huts. In this way, the Golden Age was both brilliance and burden, a flowering of knowledge and beauty, but one sustained by the quiet, unacknowledged effort of countless ordinary lives. Even the elite were not immune to uncertainty. Wealth could be lost through political upheaval, rebellion, or famine. Caliphs themselves could be overthrown, their palaces abandoned, their fortunes scattered. The poor, meanwhile, lived with constant fragility. Illness without medicine, hunger without relief, heat without respite. And yet, in their own way, they endured, finding solace in family, in faith, in community. Picture Baghdad once more at dusk. In one courtyard, candles are lit, musicians play softly, and nobles recline on cushions as servants bring food. In another part of the city, a family gathers around a single lamp, sharing bread and lentils, their children already drowsy with sleep. Two worlds, separate yet intertwined, bound together by the same city, the same river, the same rhythm of prayer that calls them both. This was the contrast of the Golden Age. Refinement and hardship, brilliance and struggle, each shaping the other. The Golden Age of Islam was not confined to one city or even one region. It stretched across vast landscapes, linking deserts, rivers, mountains, and seas into a single web of connection. The geography of this empire was not just backdrop. It was an active presence, shaping trade, culture, and the rhythm of survival. To live in this world was to live with geography as both a gift and a challenge. The rivers brought fertility, the deserts carried silence, the seas opened paths, and the mountains offered both shelter and barrier. At the heart of the Abbasid world flowed two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. They nourished the soil of Mesopotamia, making it one of the most fertile regions of the empire. Imagine standing by the Tigris at dawn. The water glimmers softly, carrying boats laden with grain, dates, and textiles. Farmers work nearby, guiding oxen through fields, their plows cutting steady furrows in rich, damp earth. Without these rivers, Baghdad itself could not have thrived. Further west, the Nile in Egypt provided another lifeline. Its annual floods brought silt and water, ensuring crops for millions. The rhythm of the Nile's rise and fall was the rhythm of survival, its waters more reliable than the shifting politics of rulers. Beyond the rivers stretched deserts, vast, silent, endless. The Arabian desert, the Syrian steppe, the Sahara, each seemed forbidding, yet each was also a pathway. Caravans crossed these deserts slowly, their camels loaded with silk, spices, ivory, and salt. The journey was long, the heat oppressive, the nights cold and clear beneath stars that glittered like shards of glass. Imagine a caravan at dusk, stopping for the night. The camels kneel, fires are lit, tents rise like small islands of shelter in the ocean of sand. Merchants rest, drinking water sparingly, eating dried dates and bread. Around them, the desert stretches silent, its horizon unbroken. For those who lived in cities, the desert was a reminder of fragility. It offered routes of trade, but also carried danger, thirst, sandstorms, and the uncertainty of survival. The seas were as important as the rivers and deserts. The Mediterranean, the Red Sea, the Persian Gulf, and the Indian Ocean became highways that connected the empire with distant lands. From Spain, ships carried olive oil, wool, and glass. From India came spices, cotton, and precious stones. From China came silk and porcelain. These goods flowed into the markets of Baghdad, Cairo, and making them some of the richest cities in the world. Imagine standing at the port of Basra. Ships with tall sails creak against the docks, their holds filled with goods from across the seas. Sailors unload crates, merchants haggle loudly, the air filled with the scent of salt water, spices, and sweat. The sea brought wealth, but also risk. Storms, piracy, and the uncertainty of distant journeys. Mountains shaped the empire's borders. To the north lay the Caucasus, rugged and steep, filled with passes that could shelter travelers or armies. To the east, the mountains of Persia stood as both barriers and protectors, guarding valleys where cities flourished. In these high places, life was slower, shaped by the rhythm of herding and farming, by the silence of thin air, and by the watchfulness of communities guarding their passes. Perhaps the most important of all was the Silk Road, a network of routes stretching from China to the Mediterranean. The Abbasid world lay at its center, benefiting from the flow of goods and ideas. Imagine traders arriving in Baghdad after months on the road. Their clothes are dusty, their faces weary, but their packs are heavy with silk, jade, and spices. They walk into the bustling markets, where goods from east and west meet, where languages mix, where knowledge itself is exchanged alongside material wealth. Trade was not only goods, it was also ideas. Mathematics from India, astronomy from Persia, philosophy from Greece. The geography of trade carried not only material wealth, but intellectual treasure. But geography was also fragile. Floods could ruin crops, droughts could bring hunger, sandstorms could bury caravans, and storms could sink ships. To live in this world was to live in constant awareness of nature's power. The wealth of cities, the brilliance of learning, the flow of trade, all depended on the steady rhythm of rivers, winds, and seasons. Picture the empire from above, as if gazing from the stars. The rivers shimmer like threads of silver, the deserts stretch vast and pale, the seas dark and glimmering, the mountains rising sharp and still. Across this vastness move caravans, ships, and scholars, carrying goods, knowledge, and stories. The geography of the Golden Age was not only landscape, it was the silent stage upon which history unfolded, the unseen force that shaped survival and brilliance alike. In the Golden Age of Islam, the pursuit of knowledge was not confined to philosophy or poetry. It extended into the practical, the tangible, the very rhythm of life itself, into medicine, astronomy, mathematics, and science. For scholars of this age, studying the body, the stars, and the earth was not only curiosity, but devotion. To understand creation was, in its own way, to honor the Creator. And so, hospitals were built, libraries filled, observatories constructed. Knowledge became a shared endeavor, patient and steady, weaving together strands from Greece, Persia, India, and Arabia into something new. Imagine entering a Bimaristan, one of the great hospitals of Baghdad or Damascus. The building is large, with courtyards shaded by trees, fountains bubbling softly at the center. Water flows through channels, carrying freshness into every room. The air is scented with herbs mint, thyme, fenugreek. Used in healing mixtures, patients rest on mats, attended by physicians who move calmly, carrying knowledge learned from both books and experience. There are wards for the sick, spaces for teaching, and areas where medicines are prepared. Unlike many earlier traditions, these hospitals are open to all, regardless of wealth, religion, or background. Here, medicine is not a matter of chance or superstition. It is study, observation, and care. Diseases are described, treatments prescribed, and recovery guided by steady attention. Among the most famous was al-Rashid, known in the West as Razors. He wrote extensively on medicine, compiling works that described diseases, treatments, and the importance of hygiene. He was careful, noting symptoms, differentiating illnesses, seeking not only to heal but to understand. Another was Ibn Sina or Avicenna, whose canon of medicine became one of the most influential medical texts in history. For centuries, it guided physicians across the Islamic world and Europe alike. In his writings, he described not only cures but also prevention, emphasizing balance, diet, and the connection between body and mind. Imagine Ibn Sina at his desk, writing late into the night. A lamp flickers beside him, casting warm light across the page. His pen moves steadily, his words describing the workings of the body, the causes of disease, the pathways to health. His thoughts, though shaped in the 11th century, still resonate in the principles of medicine today. But knowledge extended beyond the body. Astronomy, too, was studied with patience and care. The movement of stars, the phases of the moon, the rhythms of the sun, all were observed and recorded. Imagine an observatory on a clear night. The air is cool, the sky vast and glittering. Scholars stand with instruments in hand. Astrolabes, quadrants, armillary spheres, they chart the heavens, noting the positions of planets, calculating eclipses, refining calendars. This was not only curiosity. Astronomy guided navigation across seas and deserts, determined prayer times, and structured calendars. The study of the stars was both practical and profound, linking the heavens with the rhythm of human life. Mathematics flourished as well. The word algebra itself comes from algebra, the title of a work by al-Khwarizmi, a mathematician of the Abbasid court. His writings introduced systematic solutions to equations, shaping the very language of mathematics we use today. Imagine a scholar bent over a table, drawing numbers and symbols with a reed pen. He works slowly, methodically, solving problems step by step. His numbers are not just abstractions, but tools for trade, for architecture, for astronomy. It was during this time that the Hindu-Arabic numeral system spread widely, replacing the cumbersome Roman numerals of earlier ages. With these numbers came the concept of zero, a silent symbol that transformed calculation forever. Underlying it all was a philosophy, that knowledge was a trust, something to be pursued not only for personal gain, but for the good of the community. Scholars shared their findings, debated them openly, and preserved them carefully. Their work was copied in libraries, translated across languages, and carried by traders into new lands. Imagine the House of Wisdom once more. Its rooms filled not only with philosophers, but with physicians, astronomers, and mathematicians. Each discipline intertwined with the others, creating a web of knowledge that was broad, resilient, and enduring. Picture Baghdad at night, the stars shining above the river, the lamps of scholars glowing in study rooms, the quiet hum of thought stretching into the hours of darkness. In one room, a physician writes. In another, an astronomer observes the heavens. In yet another, a mathematician solves equations, his pen scratching steadily on parchment. Theirs was not a loud revolution, but a patient one, a steady accumulation of knowledge that would shape medicine, science, and learning for centuries. In the golden age of Islam, beauty was not separate from life. It was woven into the walls of mosques, the lines of calligraphy, the patterns of carpets, and the designs of palaces. Art was not only for display, but for devotion, reflection, and rhythm. It was meant to guide the eye toward harmony, to remind the mind of order, and to bring stillness to the heart. Imagine entering the great mosque, of its rows of arches stretch endlessly, red and white stripes repeating in gentle rhythm. The light filters softly through windows, scattering across marble floors. The columns rise in silent rows, each one steady, supporting, reminding you of both strength and stillness. The design is not loud, not crowded. It is spacious, symmetrical, and calming. A geometry that draws the eye forward, guiding thought toward reflection. Elsewhere, in Baghdad, palaces and gardens reflected the same principles. Fountains bubbled quietly, courtyards were shaded by trees, and walls were covered with intricate geometric patterns. Water and symmetry shaped these spaces, offering a vision of order and paradise on earth. If architecture gave form, calligraphy gave voice. Words of the Quran were written not only to be read, but to be seen. Letters curved gracefully, elongated, interlaced, forming designs that were both language and art. Imagine a scribe seated with a sheet of parchment before him. His pen is cut from a reed, dipped in dark ink. Slowly, carefully, he draws each letter, his hand steady, his breath calm. The line flows smoothly, each stroke deliberate, each word a balance of meaning and beauty. Calligraphy adorned mosques, books, coins, and even everyday objects. It was a constant presence, reminding people that beauty and devotion were intertwined. Another hallmark of Islamic art was the use of repeating patterns. Geometric shapes that seemed to stretch endlessly. Stars interlacing, lines weaving in perfect rhythm. Imagine standing before a wall tiled with such patterns. At first, you see only a star. Then you notice how it connects to others, how the shapes expand outward, how no end can be found. The pattern becomes infinite, suggesting a universe without limit, order within vastness. These designs were not only decoration, they were meditations, reminders of unity, infinity, and the unseen harmony of creation. Books, too, were made beautiful. Manuscripts of science, poetry, and scripture were decorated with gold leaf, vivid colors, and delicate designs. The margins shimmered with vines and flowers, the letters framed in elegance. Imagine opening one of these books by lamplight. The pages glow softly, the ink dark against cream parchment, the gold catching the light like quiet stars. The words themselves carry meaning, but the design adds calm, beauty, and reverence. Perhaps the most peaceful art form of all was the garden. In cities like Baghdad and later in Al-Andalus, gardens were designed to reflect paradise. Water channels dividing the space, trees planted for shade, flowers blooming in rhythm with the seasons. Imagine walking in such a garden. The air is cool, scented with roses and jasmine. Fountains murmur softly, birds call from the trees. The paths lead you slowly, gently, through shade and light. It is not only a place of beauty, but of reflection, a reminder of balance, of the harmony between nature and design. Picture the Golden Age, not only in words or deeds, but in images. Arches repeating endlessly, letters flowing gracefully, patterns stretching without end, gardens blooming quietly. Beauty was not excess, but balance, not noise, but harmony, not fleeting, but enduring. It was art as devotion, architecture as reflection, design as memory of the eternal. If architecture gave the Golden Age its walls, and science its structure, it was literature and poetry that gave it its voice. For in this era, words were not merely written, they were spoken, sung, recited, and remembered. They were threads woven into the daily rhythm of life, carrying beauty, wisdom, and sometimes laughter. Poetry was not rare or distant. It was a living art shared in courts, markets, and gatherings. Poets held high status, their verses celebrated, their voices listened to with respect. Through rhythm and rhyme, they expressed love, longing, faith, and even satire. Imagine a gathering in a shaded courtyard. Nobles recline on cushions, a fountain murmurs nearby, and a poet stands with calm dignity. His voice rises slowly, reciting verses he has crafted with care. The words flow in measured rhythm, their beauty not in performance, but in cadence. The listeners nod softly, their eyes half closed, allowing the verses to sink into memory. One of the great poets of this age was al-Rashid, whose words captured ambition, pride, and the complexity of human experience. His lines, strong and steady, were remembered long after his death, becoming proverbs and sayings passed through generations. Others wrote of love, verses filled with longing, delicate images of gardens, stars, and the heart's desires. Still others composed satire, sharp yet graceful, gently mocking rulers or rivals. Poetry was flexible, but always elegant, always woven with rhythm that could be remembered even without ink. Beyond poetry, literature flourished in prose. Philosophical works, histories, and collections of wisdom spread widely. One beloved form was the adab, literature of manners, anecdotes, and guidance. These works combine stories, jokes, poems, and reflections, offering both entertainment and instruction. Imagine a teacher seated with students in a small chamber, reading aloud from a book of adab. The stories are varied, some humorous, some moral, some instructive. The students listen, smiling at the clever turns of phrase, pondering the wisdom quietly. The room is filled not with spectacle, but with calm appreciation of words. Perhaps no collection captures the imagination more than 1001 Nights, though its origins stretch across many lands. Persian, Indian, Arabic, it became deeply associated with the Islamic world during this age. At its heart is the figure of Shahrazada, who tells stories night after night to prolong her life. Her tales of Aladdin, Ali Baba, Sinbad became woven into the cultural memory, blending fantasy with wisdom, adventure with morality. Imagine listening to such a story by lamplight. The voice is calm, steady, the story unfolding slowly. Palaces rise, seas stretch vast, genies whisper from lamps. The listener is carried into another world, not in haste, but gently, guided by the rhythm of the tale. Storytelling was not confined to books. In markets, storytellers stood before small crowds, their voices rising and falling, their hands gesturing lightly. Children gathered around grandparents at night, listening to tales passed from memory. Stories were part of rest, part of education, part of the quiet bonding that held communities together. Imagine sitting in a courtyard at night, the air cool, the stars overhead. A grandfather begins a tale, his voice low but steady. Children lean forward, their eyes wide, their minds carried into distant lands. The story flows slowly, gently, each word a step in the journey, each pause a breath of anticipation. Picture the Golden Age not only as buildings or discoveries, but as words. Words recited softly in poetry. Words written carefully in books. Words whispered in stories at night. The rhythm of language was its own kind of music, soothing, steady, enduring. It connected people across generations, across places, across time. Even now, fragments of these words remain, their cadence still able to calm the heart. The Golden Age of Islam was not only an age of scholars, poets, and architects. It was also an age of trade, of wealth that flowed like a river through cities, and of the empire that carried both splendor and weight. For all the brilliance of this period, it rested on networks of exchange. Caravans crossing deserts, ships sailing seas, and markets alive with goods and voices. And with wealth came responsibility, complexity, and burden. Imagine walking through the great markets of Baghdad. The streets are narrow, yet crowded with stalls, shaded by cloths stretched overhead. Here, a spice merchant displays piles of cinnamon, saffron, and pepper. There, a jeweler lays out gold bracelets, silver rings, and precious stones brought from India. The air is filled with a sense of incense, roasted meat, and freshly baked bread. Coins change hands constantly. Dinars of gold, dirhams of silver, copper coins for smaller purchases. Merchants call out their prices, buyers haggle softly, scribes sit ready to record contracts. Everywhere there is movement, exchange, the steady pulse of commerce. For those who thrived here, life seemed abundant, but for others, the porters carrying heavy sacks, the servants hurrying between stalls. The wealth of the market was something they labored to support, but rarely shared in full. The goods in the market did not appear by chance. They were carried across deserts and mountains by caravans that moved slowly, steadily, day after day. Imagine a line of camels stretching across the horizon. Their bells jingle softly, their steps patient. On their backs are sacks of silk, bales of cotton, jars of glass, and bundles of spices. The merchants walk beside them, wrapped in robes against the sun, carrying water carefully stored for the journey. At night, the caravan stops. Fires are lit, tents rise like small islands of shelter in the vast desert. Merchants sit quietly, drinking from cups, eating dates and flatbread. The stars stretch endlessly above, their light steady, their silence deep. The wealth of the cities depended on these long, slow journeys, on the endurance of men and animals who crossed the harshest landscapes. Beyond the desert, wealth also traveled by sea. Ships sailed from the ports of Basra, Aden, and Alexandria, their sails catching the steady winds of the Indian Ocean. Imagine standing on a dock at dawn. The air is salty, gulls circle overhead, and ships creak as sailors prepare for departure. Cargo is loaded carefully. Sacks of grain, jars of oil, bolts of silk, and chests of coins. The sea is calm, but the horizon is wide, and the journey will be long. These ships connected the Islamic world to India, China, Africa, and beyond. They carried not only goods, but stories, ideas, and cultures. Yet the sea, like the desert, was unforgiving. Storms could sink ships, pirates could attack, and long journeys tested both crew and merchant alike. All this wealth strengthened the empire, but it also created burdens. Taxes had to be collected, roads maintained, ports secured, armies supplied. Officials oversaw trade routes. Judges resolved disputes. Soldiers guarded caravans. The machinery of empire was vast, intricate, and demanding. Imagine a caliph in his palace, hearing reports from across the empire. A caravan delayed by bandits. A port struck by storm. A province asking for reduced taxes after a poor harvest. The wealth of the empire was immense, but so too was the effort required to sustain it. And wealth, though abundant, was fragile. A single drought could reduce harvests, raising the price of bread in every market. A war could disrupt trade routes, leaving caravans idle and merchants desperate. An epidemic could sweep through cities, silencing markets and emptying streets. For the commoner, these shifts were felt most keenly. The price of bread rising meant hunger. A delayed caravan meant empty shops. The empire's burdens were carried heavily by those with the least to spare. Picture the Golden Age at dusk, its markets closing for the night. Merchants count their coins by lamplight. Porters rest, their backs weary. Ships lie moored at harbours, their sails folded. Caravans settle in desert camps, fires flickering beneath endless stars. The wealth of this world was real, shimmering, abundant. But it was also fragile, carried on the backs of camels, the sails of ships, and the labour of countless hands. The brilliance of the age rested on both abundance and burden. Splendor above, endurance below. The golden age of Islam was not only an age of scholars, poets, and architects. It was also an age of trade, of wealth that flowed like a river through cities, and of the empire that carried both splendor and weight. For all the brilliance of this period, it rested on networks of exchange. Caravans crossing deserts, ships sailing seas, and markets alive with goods and voices. And with wealth came responsibility, complexity, and burden. Imagine walking through the great markets of Baghdad. The streets are narrow, yet crowded with stalls, shaded by cloths stretched overhead. Here, a spice merchant displays piles of cinnamon, saffron, and pepper. There, a jeweler lays out gold bracelets, silver rings, and precious stones brought from India. The air is filled with the scents of incense, roasted meat, and freshly baked bread. Coins change hands constantly. Dinars of gold, dirhams of silver, copper coins for smaller purchases. Merchants call out their prices, buyers haggle softly, scribes sit ready to record contracts. Everywhere there is movement, exchange, the steady pulse of commerce. For those who thrived here, life seemed abundant, but for others, the porters carrying heavy sacks, the servants hurrying between stalls. The wealth of the market was something they labored to support, but rarely shared in full. The goods in the market did not appear by chance. They were carried across deserts and mountains by caravans that moved slowly, steadily, day after day. Imagine a line of camels stretching across the horizon. Their bells jingle softly, their steps patient. On their backs are sacks of silk, bales of cotton, jars of glass, and bundles of spices. The merchants walk beside them, wrapped in robes against the sun, carrying water carefully stored for the journey. At night, the caravan stops. Fires are lit, tents rise like small islands of shelter in the vast desert. Merchants sit quietly, drinking from cups, eating dates and flatbread. The stars stretch endlessly above, their light steady, their silence deep. The wealth of the cities depended on these long, slow journeys, on the endurance of men and animals who crossed the harshest landscapes. Beyond the desert, wealth also traveled by sea. Ships sailed from the ports of Basra, Aden, and Alexandria, their sails catching the steady winds of the Indian Ocean. Imagine standing on a dock at dawn. The air is salty, gulls circle overhead, and ships creak as sailors prepare for departure. Cargo is loaded carefully. Sacks of grain, jars of oil, bolts of silk, and chests of coins. The sea is calm, but the horizon is wide, and the journey will be long. These ships connected the Islamic world to India, China, Africa, and beyond. They carried not only goods, but stories, ideas, and cultures. Yet the sea, like the desert, was unforgiving. Storms could sink ships, pirates could attack, and long journeys tested both crew and merchant alike. All this wealth strengthened the empire, but it also created burdens. Taxes had to be collected, roads maintained, ports secured, armies supplied. Officials oversaw trade routes. Judges resolved disputes. Soldiers guarded caravans. The machinery of empire was vast, intricate, and demanding. Imagine a caliph in his palace, hearing reports from across the empire. A caravan delayed by bandits. A port struck by storm. a province asking for reduced taxes after a poor harvest. The wealth of the empire was immense, but so too was the effort required to sustain it. And wealth, though abundant, was fragile. A single drought could reduce harvests, raising the price of bread in every market. A war could disrupt trade routes, leaving caravans idle and merchants desperate. An epidemic could sweep through cities, silencing markets and emptying streets. For the commoner, these shifts were felt most keenly. The price of bread rising meant hunger. A delayed caravan meant empty shops. The empire's burdens were carried heavily by those with the least to spare. Picture the Golden Age at dusk, its markets closing for the night. Merchants count their coins by lamplight. Porters rest, their backs weary. Ships lie moored at harbours, their sails folded. Caravans settle in desert camps, fires flickering beneath endless stars. The wealth of this world was real, shimmering, abundant. But it was also fragile, carried on the backs of camels, the sails of ships, and the labour of countless hands. The brilliance of the age rested on both abundance and burden. Splendor above, endurance below. Every age of brilliance must eventually change. The Golden Age of Islam, which had seen the rise of great cities, the flourishing of science, and the beauty of art and poetry, did not last forever. Its decline was not sudden, but slow, a quiet unraveling shaped by political struggles, invasions, and shifting centers of power. What was once a lantern of learning dimmed, though its light was never entirely extinguished. The Abbasid Caliphate, which had begun with unity, eventually fractured under its own weight. The empire stretched across vast lands, from Spain in the west to Persia in the east. To govern such distance was a constant challenge. Imagine the Caliph in Baghdad, receiving reports from distant provinces. Each one speaks of local rulers growing stronger, of taxes withheld, of loyalty waning. The empire was too large, too complex, and slowly its unity dissolved. Regional powers rose, the Fatimids in Egypt, the Umayyads in Al-Andalus, the Seljuks in Persia. Each carried forward parts of the tradition. But the single center of Baghdad no longer held all the threads of authority. Perhaps the most dramatic moment of decline came centuries later. In 1258, when the Mongols reached Baghdad, the city that had once been the heart of the Golden Age was sacked, its libraries destroyed, its scholars scattered. Imagine the silence that followed. Streets, once filled with merchants and poets, lay empty. The house of wisdom, where knowledge had been gathered and translated, was gone. For many, it seemed as though the lantern of the age had been extinguished. And yet, even here, fragments survived. Manuscripts carried elsewhere, scholars who fled and continued their work, traditions preserved in memory. Another force of decline was economic. Trade routes that once enriched Baghdad and Cairo shifted with time. New powers rose along the Mediterranean and eventually Europe, reaching outward by sea. The Silk Road still carried goods, but its centrality diminished, and with it, the prosperity of the great Islamic cities. Imagine a caravan arriving at a quieter market, merchants finding fewer buyers, ships sailing to new ports that bypassed the old. Wealth no longer flowed as freely, and with it, the rhythm of abundance slowed. Within the empire, internal struggles deepened the decline. Rival dynasties fought for power. Corruption crept into administration. The balance between rulers and provinces tilted, leaving cracks in the once strong foundations. Imagine a governor in a distant province declaring independence, no longer sending taxes to Baghdad. The Caliph, already weakened, can do little more than protest. The empire, once vast and united, becomes fragmented, each piece carrying forward a smaller portion of its former glory. And yet, even in decline, the legacy of the Golden Age endured. Scholars carried manuscripts to Cairo, Damascus, and beyond. In Spain, Islamic learning influenced Christian Europe, preserving texts of Aristotle, Galen, and Ptolemy until they were translated into Latin. From these, the Renaissance itself would later draw strength. Imagine a monk in medieval Europe reading a Latin text, unaware that it had passed through Arabic hands centuries before. The knowledge of the Golden Age traveled quietly, invisibly, yet persistently. It is tempting to speak of decline as ending, but in truth, the Golden Age transformed. Its cities faded, its unity dissolved, but its influence spread outward, shaping worlds beyond its borders. Mathematics, medicine, astronomy, and philosophy continued their journey, woven into new traditions, adapted by new hands. The lantern dimmed in one place, but its light flickered to others, illuminating paths far beyond its original home. Picture the Golden Age as a flame. At first, it burns bright, steady, illuminating vast lands with knowledge, art, and brilliance. Over time, the flame flickers, its edges softening, its brightness less certain. But rather than disappearing, sparks drift outward, carried by winds, lighting smaller flames in distant lands. The decline of the Golden Age was not silence, but transformation, a reminder that even when empires fade, their ideas can endure. The Golden Age of Islam has long since passed, yet its presence remains with us. Not in bustling markets or gleaming palaces, but in the quiet endurance of ideas, discoveries, and traditions that still shape the world today. To look back is to see not only what has vanished, but what has endured. The most lasting gift of this age was knowledge. Texts once translated in Baghdad found their way to Europe, shaping the Renaissance and beyond. Algebra, algorithms, and the numeral zero became foundations of mathematics. Medical works influenced physicians for centuries, guiding their understanding of the body and disease. Astronomical observations, refined calendars, navigation, and the study of the heavens. Imagine a modern student solving an equation, unaware that the word algebra itself comes from Arabic, from the work of al-Khwarizmi, or a physician reading about balance and prevention, echoing the wisdom of Ibn Sina. The threads of the Golden Age are woven quietly into the fabric of modern life. Its art and architecture, too, remain. The arches of still rise, calm and steady. The courtyards of Alhambra in Spain still shimmer with water and light. Patterns and calligraphy still inspire artists, reminding us of harmony and infinity. Imagine standing before such a wall today. Your eyes follow the patterns, stars within stars, shapes repeating without end. You feel the same calm that someone centuries ago might have felt. A connection not of time, but of perception. The beauty endures, carrying peace across centuries. And yet, the Golden Age also offers lessons in fragility. Even the greatest empires can fracture. Even the brightest centers of learning can fall silent. Baghdad's house of wisdom is gone, its shelves empty, its manuscripts lost. The brilliance of the age reminds us that light must be preserved, or it can fade. This is not a lesson of despair, but of humility. It teaches us that progress is not guaranteed, that knowledge must be cared for, carried forward, renewed in every age. Perhaps the most profound legacy is not in texts or buildings, but in the human spirit that animated them. The scholars who copied manuscripts by lamplight, the physicians who cared for patients in bimaristans, the poets who recited verses in courtyards, their quiet dedication reminds us of what endurance truly means. Imagine them now, a scribe at his desk, an astronomer gazing at the stars, a poet whispering lines into the night air. They did not know their work would travel so far, yet they pursued it steadily, patiently. Their legacy is not only brilliance, but constancy. Picture the Golden Age one last time. The streets of Baghdad alive with merchants. The halls of the House of Wisdom filled with scholars. The mosques, the gardens, the libraries. Now let them fade, gently, like lanterns dimming at the close of night. What remains is not only memory, but presence. In the books we read, the numbers we use, the beauty we admire, the knowledge we pass on. The lesson of the Golden Age is simple. Brilliance and fragility are intertwined. And what endures is what we choose to remember, to carry forward. We have traveled far tonight. From Baghdad's busy streets to stunning arches, history whispers everywhere. We have walked with scholars, listened to poets, and watched caravans cross deserts and ships sail seas. We have seen the wealth of trade, the rhythm of devotion, the beauty of art, and the fragility of empire. And finally, we have reflected on what endures, the knowledge, the beauty, and the lessons carried into our own time. The Golden Age of Islam was an age of brilliance, but also of burden. Its people lived without the comforts we know, enduring hunger, heat, and uncertainty. Yet they created works of such depth that they still touch us today. They remind us that even in difficulty, the human spirit can seek beauty, knowledge, and meaning. As you listen now, you are far removed from the dust of the markets, the heat of the desert, and the silence of the caravan camps. You are safe, at rest, in your own space. Your bed is soft, your surroundings calm. Perhaps you hear only the faint sounds of the night around you, or the quiet rhythm of your own breathing. Where once survival meant labor from dawn until dusk, you now have the gift of peace, the comfort of shelter, the security of rest. The contrast is vast, and in that contrast lies gratitude. Now it is time to let go of the images of the Golden Age. Let the streets of Baghdad grow quiet. Let the House of Wisdom fade into silence. Let the arches, gardens, and caravans dissolve softly into the stillness of night. What remains is not the weight of history, but the calm rhythm it leaves behind. Take a slow breath. Feel your body sink into comfort. Allow your mind to rest, knowing the journey is complete. The past belongs to memory, and the present belongs to peace. The brilliance of the Golden Age is behind us, and the calm of this night is before you. You need only close your eyes, release the last of your thoughts, and drift gently into sleep. To help you, I have added calm music at the end of this video. Let it carry you softly, like the flow of a river or the hush of desert wind, deeper and deeper into rest. Good night. Sleep well.